Incredible. That's just a little bit of it. His message was also a bit of an echo of remarks earlier by the Democratic nominee for governor in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. He, of course, is running against Doug Mastriano, an opponent who, more than perhaps any other Republican candidate in our country, embodies all things MAGA and the Republican Party's anti-democratic impulses. Here's what Josh Shapiro had to say.
That is not how our democracy works. That's not how we do things in this Commonwealth or in this country. And that is not freedom. You know, this guy loves to talk a good game about freedom, right? Let me tell you something. It's not freedom to tell women what they're allowed to do with their bodies. That's not freedom. It's not freedom to tell our children what books they're allowed to read. It's not freedom when he gets to decide who you're allowed to marry. I say love is love. It's not freedom to say you can work a 40-hour work week, but you can't be a member of the union. That's not freedom. And it sure as hell isn't freedom to say you can go vote, but he gets to pick the winner. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. But you know what? You know what we're for? We're for real freedom. And let me tell you what real freedom is. Real freedom is when you see that young child in North Philly and you see the potential in her, so you invest in her public school. That's real freedom. That's real freedom. Real freedom comes when we invest in that young child's neighborhood to make sure it's safe so she gets to her 18th birthday. That's real freedom. Real freedom comes when we put Votech in her school and opened up her eyes to the possibility of being a welder. We sent her to a union apprenticeship program, and we believed in her, so she started a small business right here in North Philadelphia. That's real freedom. Real freedom comes when she hires a whole bunch of people that were never going to have a shot before. They went on to marry the people they love, worship where they want, live in a community that is safe, live in a place that respects them. That is real freedom, and that is what's on the ballot right now.
And that is where we begin today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. John Harris is here. He joins us. He's the founding editor and columnist for Politico. Here with me at the table, I love saying that, former Senator Claire McCaskill joins us, and former Republican Congressman David Jolly is here. Both are MSNBC contributors. John Harris, I'll start with you. I thought that most of the political romantic had been beaten out of me by the events of the last 5 years, but I watched that rally. I think I watched it on C-SPAN Saturday, which tells you a lot about my Saturday. But those were two speeches really definitional, not just of these midterms, but of this moment.
Well, I agree. You know, President Obama shows he's been out of the game for a little bit, but he's still got it. You know, really what's striking to me, it evokes so much of his debut on the national stage now 18 years ago, a little more than that. Remember in that convention speech, what year was it? Were we in New York that year?
Was it?
When he gave that keynote address.
Yeah.
And it really, so much of the rhetoric actually transfers across across now almost 20 years. So I agree with you. It was quite powerful.
I thought that Josh Shapiro unleashed something that hasn't really been present on the stump. And granted, sort of a culminating get out the vote rally with the president, the former president standing there certainly raises the emotion and raises the stakes. But that was an extraordinary performance, Claire, from Josh Shapiro as well.
It was really something from both of them. And it reminded me of a time when that was the norm, where both candidates were trying to lift people up, trying to bind people together. That used to be what everyone did. right? I mean, I remember the guy you worked for. When he ran for president, it was all about trying to get everybody together, and we can work together, and we don't have to be so divided. So we have one party that is still there with the values of integrity and real freedom and truth and character, and we're America, and we can do this together. And then you got another party that is all about grievance and the least common denominator among us. Who do you hate, and why should you hate them? And don't trust anybody, and everybody's a fraud. And so it is such a dichotomy in our politics right now, and it's hard for me. I get emotional when I think about it because it's hard for me to imagine that people are attracted more to the grievance than they are to the inspirational and the aspirational. It's very sad to me that we're here at that moment.
What do you think watching these two men?
Josh Shapiro did something incredibly smart there that I think all national Democrats should pay attention to. He dismantled the Republicans' narrative of freedom. Republicans shout freedom as this declaration. Democrats embrace it as a calling for policy changes. Right? How do you create true freedom of opportunity, equality of opportunity for all people, all walks of life, in education and healthcare, in the economy? And I think, look, I'm close to the Florida politics. What you're seeing play out in Florida is this declaration of freedom, that you can be anything you want to be. You can do whatever you want. But that's not true if you're an LGBT teacher. It's not true if you lost a family member to COVID because the governor denied the mask mandates. It's not true if you're a corporation like Disney who speaks out using the voice of your shareholders and your employees. The Republican narrative of freedom is a false one. And what Shapiro did there is he dismantled it. And he said, you know what, as a potential next governor of the state of Pennsylvania, as a Democratic standard bearer, what I'm about to tell you is that freedom in America could look very differently than what you've been promised the last 6 years. It's a powerful, powerful message.
You know, John, Obama also has, nothing to hold back. And he's made clear that the Republicans are animated by what Claire's talking about, the grievances, but owning the libs. This is a powerful, powerful driver. It sort of animates, I think, some of the most watched hours on their favorite cable news network. It animates, their attraction to some of these grievance candidates. And Obama's at a point where he puts it out there and puts it on the table. He makes this contrast to values that I imagine would be very salient all across the country, outside and including Pennsylvania.
Well, of course, Senator McCaskill is right that our politics today really is motivated in fundamental ways by grievance. But it seems to me in all times, politics is a balance between mobilization, getting your side really fired up, and to some extent persuasion. We've got a very narrow group of people who are still on the fence, but that message of persuasion, come join us. It's more aspirational. It's more in tune with your values. Very hard to balance those things and get them right. And I was struck that President Obama's message really was just a fine balance between mobilization, get out, this is important, and persuasion. Hey, we don't have to be so divided. We don't have to be driven by grievance and by contempt. And that contempt, we live in an era of the politics of contempt. We see where it's taken us.
Let me show you some more of President Obama's speech. He takes on this thing that I know Democrats have wrestled with publicly and privately, and that's how to talk about the democracy in the context of what is real for most Americans, and that's economic angst. Here's President Obama.